The story of Mike Burrows, the man who designed the revolutionary superbike.
He's going to take the gold medal to become the 4,000-metre Olympic champion, and he does just that. He doesn't need the total distance. It's all over. Chris Boardman is the Olympic champion.
Mike Burrows, the man who dreamed up the Lotus Olympic bike. An English eccentric at the heart of an English city. Every day, in all weathers, Mike Burrows pedals one of his bikes around Norwich. And while he pedals, he dreams.
You just drift away, you're riding around on something else, and suddenly a little idea, a tiny little thing comes in and adds to all of the others that are rolling around in the back of your head, and suddenly there's something worth turning into metal or carbon fibre.
Mike Burrows is a self-taught engineer who left school at 15. His ambition is to make man the fastest animal on Earth. At Rackheath, outside Norwich, Mike runs a small engineering business. In the morning he designs and builds machines which package coins. And in the afternoon he invents bicycles and other human-powered vehicles, or HPVs.
Yeah, that's a bit better, isn't it? Yeah, I'll try that.
I can do things with my hands. I can't understand. I never learned a single one of my times tables at school, ever. I could never recite one table. Yet I can pick a piece of metal up and know exactly how thick it needs to be to do something. I just have that ability to do that, and it works. At the level I work at, I mean, I couldn't make satellites or aeroplanes because that is much too technical. You have to use computers, if you like. But bicycles and HPVs, you can operate at that level, and it works for me.
Mike grew up in St Albans, where his father was a pattern maker in the de Havilland bomber factory. His boyhood enthusiasms were for flight and aero modelling. Life was bliss when Dad left de Havilland to run the local model shop.
The nice thing about aero modelling is it's all down to you. You understand aerodynamics, mechanics, the structure of things, and you can learn very quickly, because unlike a real aeroplane where you can't afford to take any chances or risk, model aeroplanes, you can churn them out by the week. You can experiment a lot. They break, you learn how to do it right.
Mike's life has been one grand passion followed by another. After aero modelling came boats and cars. Mike didn't discover bikes until the 70s, but when he did, it was love at first sight.
The bicycle is surrounded by myth and legend like nothing else I've ever come across. So it never occurs to you to build a bicycle straight off. You know, it really doesn't. There was never a bicycle made that wasn't made out of tubing. That was the essence of the bicycle. I mean, there had been plastic bikes and all sorts. I mean, people have reinvented the bicycle 10 times a year, but basically, a traditional bicycle was a collection of tubes, and I suddenly realised it didn't need to be.
In the early 80s, Mike escaped into the wacky world of human-powered vehicles, where coverings of lightweight materials like carbon fibre could make you go faster. The tyranny of the tubular bike frame was left behind. Speed was everything.
I was doing 45 miles an hour laying on my back in these streamlined body shells. Why didn't we do something like that on the bicycle? So my bicycle started to be designed logically. I started to analyse why it was bicycles didn't go fast, which no one had ever done. Or at least if they had, they hadn't done anything about it. With this new material, with carbon fibre, you made the bicycle directly, in one piece. You simply joined the wheels up with the material directly, and you could then make it any shape you wanted. It was wonderful. I droodled on paper, I came up with some dimensions, rushed off to see father, who was a pattern maker. Make this, Dad.
When Richard Burrows retired to Shipton, he turned his lifetime skills into a hobby. It was in 1982 that Mike rushed into his father's garage-cum-workshop and declared that he'd reinvented the bicycle. The frame was to be in one piece.
Yeah. Should I carry on?
Yeah, carry on, right.
Mike needed his dad to carve the shape of the bike in wood.
Perfect.
Yeah, well, yeah. The little fiddly bit on the front, is that going to be a problem?
No, well, as I say, when we get the other bit fixed to it.
The monocoque had to be planed to perfection as the model for a mould for the carbon fibre bike frame.
It's an awkward shape with a little tight rail. Mike might even like moulding it, but if we can get that finish off, that'll help. But yeah, once you get a bit of curve from front to back on that's going to finish that off nicely.
To take his dream bike a stage further, Mike visited the Norfolk backwater of Lingwood.
Yeah, for you, Linda. There. That's worth coming out for, isn't it?
In this unlikely rustic setting is a centre of technological expertise. Mike and Sylvia Nelthorpe are moulders of light and strong materials like carbon fibre. Their contribution to the revolutionary bike began with priming and sanding down the monocoque from which the mould for the bike would be made. Eventually, they'd produce an exact replica in carbon fibre.
Well, it's come this far, Mike. Mike Nelthorpe I was already working with on the fiberglass seats and the bodies for the HPVs. And I said, look, can we get carbon fibre? Friends we must be able to get it, so we got carbon fibre. Desperately hard. I mean, the theory's fine, the practice was difficult. But within a couple of years, we'd finally made a rideable carbon bicycle. Took this along to its first race, which was on a May Day, which I thought was nice for a revolutionary bicycle, and turned up. And I did a brilliant ride. I actually did one of my best ever rides and beat a clubmate of mine who was the club's champion at that distance, sort of thing, which is really satisfying because I designed a faster bicycle, and no one had done that in 100 years.
Confident that his bike was a winner, Mike unveiled it to the industry and the racing world. Their response devastated him.
Nothing. I mean, not in real terms. I mean, Raleigh didn't come knocking the door down to the building, nor did anybody else. Nobody wanted to give me lots of money to start making the bicycle tomorrow. Lots of people thought it was pretty. The British team saw it. They liked it. Jim Hendry was the first official to say, yeah, that's great. We would like Britain to have that.
We took the bike in 1983 to the World Championships for the internationals, technical officials to look at it. And they had a bit of a laugh and said, no, you can't use that. We tried again in 1986 when they were a little bit more interested and said, but it's still outside the rules.
Well, the first time I came across Mike's bike was in Italy. Must have been 1985 when the bike had come along with us to the World Championship where the UCI, the World Governing Body, meet to see if we could get it ratified. And at that time, I think they just basically had a little laugh and said, I don't think so, somehow.
I could not see why people couldn't see its advantages, And, I mean, I don't want to be conceited, but it must have been a bit like Einstein. Look, E equals MC squared, you fools, can't you see this, I thought, well, maybe I am too far ahead of the game. I've jumped such a big step that maybe the fact that people are used to looking collections of tubes and this, I just made something else. They don't even realise it's a bicycle.
His ego bruised, Mike parked his revolutionary bike in his workshop and went back to the world of HPVs, where off-the-wall ideas were more appreciated. In summer 1991, fate intervened.
Oh, sweetie.
Hey, look at him, just
On a quiet afternoon in a Norwich bike shop, Mike ran into Frenchman Rudy Thoman, an ex-Formula 2 driver now working for Lotus. Rudy knew that world cycling regulations had been relaxed, and he reckoned Mike's bike was now legal. He also knew that the Barcelona Olympics were less than 12 months away.
Tackle it again. There will be a logic there. The full logic.
Yeah.
Rudy rushed off to show Mike's bike to his bosses at Lotus. Lotus were internationally famous for their luxury sports cars, also with moulded one-piece bodies. Their engineering division did pioneering design work in the motor industry. Elitist and quirky, Lotus had a highly developed company philosophy and a clear idea of their role in the world. Head of engineering Roger BECKER reckoned he knew a Lotus product when he saw one.
It's arguable today that perhaps I am Mr. Lotus in many ways. I carry the flag of Lotus and understand what a Lotus must be. I mean, that's what I saw in the bike originally. I mean, I saw it as a Lotus. There is a mark of performance, there is a mark of style, there is a mark of charisma about Lotus, which I saw in that bicycle.
Cycling journalist Richard Grant has followed the inside story of the bike from the beginning. He sees Lotus's involvement as a turning point.
You have to remember that Mike Burrows had the bike in concept form and in various levels since, what, 84, 85. Nobody had recognised how good the bike was in any respect. It took people a vision. What I find fascinating is that the vision that both Rudy Thoman and Roger BECKER brought to it wasn't the vision of committees, and it wasn't sort of, we'll take away and think about it. It was 15 seconds to recognise what the bicycle industry for 6, 7 years had said, doesn't work, can't see the point of it, why should we tool up for it? And that, I think, was a tremendous contribution.
The engineers obviously loved it at Lotus. There's some very, very clever guys over there, the technical expertise. And I mean, they know nothing about bicycles, they know technology, and they see, yes, you know, that's streamlined, that's nice, they could understand the logic.
I mean, obviously you will have to redefine the underneath section.
Rudy Thoman passed on his passion for the bike to the Lotus aerodynamicist Richard Hill. Although he knew very little about bikes, Hill could see the potential of Mike's invention. But the project didn't get the wholehearted support of the Lotus board.
We were going through a very difficult stage financially. We had got certain problems within the car company at that time, which we were all trying to get sorted out. And a wild idea of bicycles at that time wasn't the flavour of the day.
Even though they got little support from above, the engineers were determined to keep going. To find out whether Mike's bike had an aerodynamic advantage, it needed to be tested in a wind tunnel. A jet of icy air is passed over the bike and rider. The further it goes without breaking up, the less aerodynamic drag, and the faster the bike will go. Chris Boardman, one of Britain's best Olympic hopes, joined the team in time for the tests. The way the air broke up and became turbulent showed that the bike and rider together were not very aerodynamic. It was the first real challenge for the Lotus team.
First results that we had, as I say, weren't too encouraging. It indicated that the contact aero bike that we had was generating about 6.6% more aerodynamic drag than than Chris Boardman's conventional bike.
Mike's original bike, if anything, the only reason it was worse is because Mike hadn't put tri-bars on. So whether it would have been the same, it's all a case of ifs and buts, really.
Because don't forget, the bicycle was set up for me to ride, so the handlebars weren't in the position that was any good for Chris, etc. So we had to re-tape Chris to the bars in what looked like ludicrous positions. And again, this is one of Richard's most useful things. Not being a cyclist, he was suggesting to Chris, could you ride even lower and things like this. Now, I as a cyclist would never think to question someone like Chris Boardman.
Where you'd be normally holding the drop handlebars on your normal weight. Just set that chin height again, off a little bit, 9.5. Right, okay. Can you hold it there for a run then?
I think so, just.
Right, same position. There we go.
Get it right, Richard, because I don't always have to peel it off again.
Right, let's just
Chris Boardman's new riding position made him a more aerodynamic shape. Air flowed freely between him and the bicycle, reducing the aerodynamic drag. This time, Mike's bike was faster. The news couldn't have come at a worse time for Lotus. 300 people had been laid off, and car production was down to 5 esprits a week. Few people saw the bike as the answer. In a porter cabin in the car park, the Lotus superbike began its life. Like Mike Burrows, Lotus used carbon fibre, the world's strongest material, for their prototype. The operation had more in common with dressmaking than engineering. A paper pattern for one side of the monocoque was smoothed out on a length of fabric, and ceramic scissors snipped out the shape of the bicycle frame. This material is also in rockets, fighter planes and fishing rods because of its strength. Mike Burrows was not invited to the dressmaking sessions in the porter cabin.
I wanted to see some of the moulding. I mean, Lotus are world famous for their composite expertise. I thought, well, it'd be nice to learn a bit about it, what they're doing, and I never got to see any of the early stage of the moulding. I never got to see what shape the bicycle had changed to. And I thought that was a bit odd. I mean, I would have thought that someone said, look, I've done so-and-so, what do you think of that? And that never happened.
Lotus wanted to make minor modifications to the shape of Mike's monocoque based on the wind tunnel results. But the method they used to build the frame was almost identical to his. First, they had to prepare a mould for the carbon fibre cutouts. Then the floppy material was pressed into all the corners and plastered with a powerful resin. This bound the carbon fibres together to make them strong. By varying the direction of the weave, the frame could be strengthened at key pressure points, like the places where the seat and wheels would be attached. The whole thing was then vacuum baked at 80 degrees centigrade for 5 hours and emerged as a hard, strong, lightweight frame. The two halves were bonded together to form the monocoque, which was to become the frame of the Lotus bicycle. By the time the first frame was ready, the distance between Mike and Lotus had grown, but he was still an essential part of the bike-building team. On the other side of Norwich, Mike Burrows did what he could do best. By using his expertise as a bicycle designer, he machine-tooled the metal bits crucial to the mechanics of the bike. They were sent back and forth by taxi. Late into the night, Mike worked as he'd always worked best, on his own.
Not being here at Lotus, he wasn't in on a great number of the actual conversations and decision-making process, but he was there. He was assisting us. He was doing things with us. We invited him down. He came down to the wind tunnel with us on the first couple of sessions to see how we were, to see what we were doing, and to offer advice where he thought he could.
The new monocoque was tested at the wind tunnel in great secrecy. The results were startlingly good. Everyone of the team now believed Boardman and the Lotus bike could win the 4-kilometre pursuit in Barcelona in 3 months' time.
There you go. Nice bit.
The shaking effect in the test?
Yeah, unfortunately we've got a bit of a problem there.
What sort of gain are we talking about on a 4,000 metre race?
At the end of last test, when we finished with Mike's bike, we were going to get a minimum of over 2 seconds advantage over Mike's bike. As the bike stands now, with this new handlebar setup, with the new monoblade and the new tri-bar setup, we've got at least 8 to 10 seconds.
So really just got to see whether we can live in this position.
Yeah,
what it's like in the field.
There's certain areas of the monocoque which are causing a bit of problem that we can improve on.
10 seconds at that level of competition look unbelievable, doesn't it, Chris?
But this is a little bit more extreme, so we'll have to try it again.
Even if we get half of that, that would be fantastic.
Sure, I mean, let's see. But potentially we've got 8 to 10 seconds in the bag, and potentially we've got a lot more.
Providing Chris is happy to ride in such a position.
Exactly.
It was amazing to visit them sort of 3-4 months before the Olympics when it was still a hush-hush project. And you'd say, well, what happens if you win the gold? And they'd turn around angrily and say, no, it's not if, it's when we win the gold. And they were absolutely convinced.
Rudy Thoman arrived at the velodrome in Barcelona with the finished bike only hours before Boardman's event. From its first appearance in the velodrome, the bike was a hit. The elegant lines of Boardman and his bike, from the strange helmet to the distinctive wheels, put cycling on the front pages of newspapers across the world. Millions of British viewers with their hearts in their mouths watched the final live on television. At Jim and Julie Lenihan's cafe on the A12 at Rackheath, Mike Burrows rode up for his meal as normal.
Well, brilliant, yeah. Where were you? Did you? No, we got down the reindeer.
That's it. I've done what, in a sense, I always wanted to do. I've designed the world's best, fastest bicycle. And that was it. I've done it.
Well done.
This was this wonderful series of coincidences that everybody and everything all came together. If it had happened the year before, the year after, another group of people. We had Rudy, this wonderful coordinator who spoke French, so we could have Mavic involved in the project. Richard, the pure technician who understood all of the things that I didn't understand, sort of thing about the aerodynamic side of things. Lotus with the technology backup and the name to sort of, you know, to push the project forward. And Chris, you know, the greatest rider Britain's ever produced, almost certainly. And that was this magic. The thing all just gelled together perfectly at the time. And then a bit like the Beatles, we've all fallen apart and we're all slagging each other off afterwards.
He can fit in. He can fit in very well when we're all in agreement. The problem comes when there's a disagreement between ways that you want to go. Mike, as you say, is a brilliant ideas man. He's a brilliant lone inventor. Lotus is a company, quite a large company. We develop cars, quite sophisticated cars in sophisticated ways, and certain ways that we have to do things.
The Olympic bike had overnight turned into a marketing man's dream, and Lotus, the car company, found themselves with orders for bikes pouring in from all over the world. But this was a bike built only to fit one man, and it had no brakes or gears. How could Lotus turn a prototype into an industry? Behind closed doors, the board argued for months about how to exploit their victory.
It has taken a long, long time to build up the ethics of that Lotus name. And it wasn't something that we were going to give away for a quick buck, really. It was something that had to be carefully considered, and we only put our name on things that are performance-related products that actually have a technical advantage against anything else.
6 months after the Olympics, Lotus have announced that a British company has been awarded a contract which will allow them to use the Lotus Sport name on their conventional bikes and spin-off products. An international firm with a production line in California will make the carbon fibre monocoques for road-going replicas of the Olympic bike. Lotus hope to have these on sale in Britain later this year.
Turning that into a road-going bicycle is very, very difficult. I mean, it's probably more difficult than making the original bicycle. It really is turning it into a production viable bicycle, not just a one-off hand-built. It is desperately hard.
So QED challenged Mike to come up with a road-going version for this programme.
Yeah. I've always built the bicycle for myself to use, which does mean a road bicycle, but with a single gear, like the track bike, but with a brake on the front wheel only. Now, turning it into a production bicycle is really quite difficult. Simply turning it into a geared bicycle I thought might be possible, you know, so that's what we're doing at the moment. Mike, the father, myself, we're going through the process all over again, but with a bit more thought and a bit more experience, and we're going to see if we can't hang a set of brakes and a set of gears and maybe make the prototype, you know, of what could be the future road-going bicycle, and that'll be very interesting to sort of see how that works out.
In the best traditions of the one-off bicycle maker, Mike has laboured for 3 months to make this road-going version, and now he's handed it over for its final painting. No one any longer disputes the huge potential of Mike's original design.
I think it's probably the most significant advance since the invention of the rover safety bicycle in terms of improving bike performance. It has told us about a new aerodynamic quality. I mean, aerodynamics did not exist as a concept in bicycles until this bike. No bicycle company possesses, and its team of workers, an aerodynamicist. Richard Hill is the first aerodynamicist to work on a bike as such, and that, I would think, is something that in years to come advanced bicycle companies will be looking to employ, you know, or have as consultants an aerodynamicist. We've not had them till now.
Unlike Mike Burrows, Lotus hope to make 2,000 bikes a year on a carbon fibre production line. Rudy Toman and Richard Hill are testing a Barcelona race replica fitted with one brake on a track normally used for high-speed cars. Only when they've worked out how to integrate brakes and gears into the monocoque frame will they have a blueprint for potential commercial success.
I think the back end's fine. All the instability is coming from the front end there. It's coming from the monoplane.
I think you're going to see quite an incredible change in the bike industry from here on in, and probably quite rightly so. And I'm proud of the fact that Lotus with Mike Burrows, I mean, it was him who gave us the launch pad of opportunity, that we have some way contributed towards that change.
Back at the launch pad of opportunity, Mike Burrows puts the finishing touches to the QED bike. It's his latest contribution to bicycling history, a road-going carbon fibre monocoque with gears and brakes. Chris Boardman is the first rider to test it. Mike Burrows reckons that in 10 years' time, many ordinary bikes will look just like this.
More from QED next Wednesday at 9:40, and the QED road bike will be on display at the Science Museum from next Tuesday, March the 16th. The story, the details and a colourful poster of the Olympic Superbike are in this viewer's guide. If you'd like a copy, please send a cheque for £2.50, payable to BBC Education, to the Bike Guide, P.O. Box 7, London W3 6XJ.